It is said that one of the singular most important days in any young woman's life is her wedding day. As a society, we compound it into every young girl's mind that she must keep herself, be successful, and get married to, of course, one day start a family of her own. It is in just such a scenario in which our next story takes place. A happy, beautiful, and successful young lady was on the verge of writing the next chapter in her life when malevolent destiny seemed to intervene. Next on Grim Visions, we explore the disturbing disappearance of Niqui McCowan.
My name is of no consequence. You may call me Grim. Thousands of people go missing in our world each year. Many are never found. I am amongst the lost, and as such I am compelled to bring you the stories of those I call the vanished. Be prepared, for these are my grim visions.
It was a typical school day when suddenly he noticed the attractive young lady standing just a few feet down the hall. From that moment on, Robert Webster knew that this was the girl for him. What caught young Robert's attention that fateful day was the lovely smile and sparkling eyes of Marilyn Renee McGowan, known to her friends and family as Niqui. The couple dated extensively until they graduated high school. Webster soon announced that he was leaving for California to pursue a career, and he and Niqui amicably split up. At 19, Niqui gave birth to a daughter, but didn't let the stresses of motherhood hold her back from her life's ambitions. She took a job at a correctional facility as a guard's watchman, but eventually worked her way up to head accountant. All the while taking criminal justice classes in the pursuit of her life goal, to work in law enforcement as either an FBI agent or a U.S. Marshal. In 1998, Robert Webster returns from California. Newly single, he decides to look up his old high school sweetheart. The pair start talking and quickly reignite their relationship as if no time between them had passed at all. And before too long, the couple announced their engagement, much to the praise of friends and family. In late July of 2001, a mere 3 weeks away from their wedding, Webster and Niqui are in the full swing of preparation for the big day. One balmy Sunday afternoon, both Webster and his fiancée are busy with errands. The excited young man is sizing tuxedos for his groomsmen, while Niqui is out doing laundry at a nearby laundromat. While going back and forth between her mother's and the laundromat, Niqui expresses concern about some men that she says are harassing her. Her mother offers the use of her washer and dryer to alleviate Niqui's concern, but the young woman politely declines the offer, saying that she would be fine and telling her mother not to worry. She once again leaves the house to return to get back to her errands. It is from that point on Niqui McCowan hasn't been seen or heard from in over 17 years. Later that afternoon, Webster returns from his errands and notices that Niqui is not home, which doesn't immediately alarm him. However, as it gets later and later into the evening, he starts to grow worried. By 7 p.m., Webster begins to call around, inquiring if anyone had heard from Niqui, which no one had. By 11 that night, with still no word, Webster, as well as her family, start to panic. All of Niqui's essentials, including her purse and wallet, are still at the house, and there are no signs that she planned to leave for any extended period of time. After a few hours of searching on their own, the McCowans file a missing persons report. The police immediately begin their search and quickly locate surveillance video of Niqui entering and leaving a local deli in close proximity to the laundromat. However, the video doesn't provide any telltale clues, as it seems to show that Niqui was alone in her time at the store. Several patrons at the laundromat are questioned, but nothing suspicious is reported to police. It's at this point that authorities begin to speculate that Niqui may have had second thoughts about getting married and could have possibly left of her own accord. However, her family fiercely repudiate this assertion. In one last-ditch effort of hope, her family waits to see if Niqui shows up for work that Monday morning. But when she fails to appear, her loved one's resolve starts to break down. In a stricken attempt to find Niqui, her family begin to canvass the streets of Richmond, Indiana, questioning anyone they come in contact with. Their efforts culminate in some violent altercations with the locals, and it's at this point that the McCowans and Richmond authorities begin to butt heads. Soon, police start to look at Robert Webster as a possible suspect in Niqui's disappearance. In the days following her vanishing, Webster abruptly cancels the wedding, pawns his engagement ring, and for some unknown reason, starts to inquire about Niqui's college loans. This raises numerous red flags with detectives, and he is brought in for questioning. Webster soon explains that he pawned the ring to buy a cell phone to better communicate with the family in their search for Niqui. He is given a polygraph, and it in turn shows indications of deception. However, despite all this, investigators fail to find any connection to him and Niqui McCowan's disappearance, but police do not eliminate him as a person of interest. Over time, Webster's relationship to the McCowans becomes increasingly strained, and they eventually sever all ties with him. 4 months after Niqui goes missing, her vehicle is located in Dayton, Ohio, some 40 miles from her home. The Jeep is discovered in a rundown apartment complex not too far from the correctional facility in which Niqui was employed. One significant clue found in the automobile is Niqui's folded up laundry in the back seat. The clothes, as well as the interior of the vehicle, is processed for DNA evidence, but frustratingly, nothing is found. Yet when the location of where Niqui's Jeep turns up is run for background, a new lead does indeed surface. Police come up with the name of a nearby resident, one Thomas Swint. It turns out that Swint and Niqui had a complicated history. With further digging, it is discovered that Swint was a co-worker of Niqui's who seemed to have romantic designs on the beautiful young woman. Niqui saw their relationship as just good friends, and Swint's advancements are rebuffed. It is later recounted by one of Niqui's siblings that Swint was once caught trying to choke Niqui out, but was stopped when the sibling intervened. Swint is immediately sought for questioning, but does not cooperate with law enforcement, citing no probable cause. Without hard evidence, police are stymied. Without concrete links to connect either Webster or Swint to Niqui's case, the investigation goes cold. Despite a large reward offered by the family in exchange for information in Niqui's disappearance, no new leads are generated. 6 years pass, and Richmond police get wind that Thomas Swint, one of the key persons of interest in the investigation, has inconceivably been hired as a police officer in a nearby city. Richmond authorities respond by moving to have Swint dismissed, and after much legal wrangling, do succeed in getting him fired.
He was never identified as a suspect, never identified as a person of interest, never charged with a crime, never accused of being someone who was involved in anything in that nature. He was interviewed because this was a friend of his that he knew.
There was not one time that Detective Redmond told me or informed me that I was a suspect or a person of interest.
However, things would only get much worse for Thomas Swint. Due to the extensive amount of media coverage given to Swint's ordeal with Richmond police, authorities receive an anonymous tip that links Swint to a decades-old unsolved murder of a local prostitute. Through DNA analysis, Swint is implicated in her death and police begin to pounce on him. He is again brought in for questioning, in which he is interrogated aggressively about the murder of the prostitute and the disappearance of Niqui McCowan. Swint predictably denies that he had anything to do with either case, and through the acquisition of his lawyers, gets off on bail. Subsequently, more evidence in the form of a fingerprint lifted off the murdered woman's bindings conclusively links the suspect as her killer, and an arrest warrant is again issued for Thomas Swint. Tipped off that police are on their way to capture him, Swint commits suicide by shooting himself in the head, thus eliminating any potential information he might have had in the disappearance of Niqui McCowan. With Swint's death, Niqi's case is dealt a major blow that has reverberated throughout the years. And ever since then, no significant headway has been made in the investigation, frustrating police and leaving Niqi's family in despair. To this day, the search for the truth about what exactly happened to Niqui McCowan on that hot July afternoon back in 2001 will continue. What can be said about the state of the universe when a young woman so full of promise is suddenly yanked from her family with little explanation? I think one question above all runs through the minds of not only the family of Niqui McCowan, but all of us. And that is the question of why. Sadly, we may never get the answer to this, and instead the universe responds to our questions with one statement, and one statement alone. Question everything. Trust no one. On behalf of Grim Visions, pleasant dreams.